Greetings from Georgia, which joined the Union on January 2nd, 1788. With 9.3 million residents, it ranks as the 9th most populous state in the nation. From the Okefenokee Swamp to the nation's most productive peanut farms to the Deep South's largest metropolitan area, Georgia is a state of contrast and contradiction. Its colonial charter guaranteed religious freedom, except for Roman Catholics. Its capital city elected a black mayor in 1973, while a Confederate battle flag flew over the State House. Even now, Georgia seems to be not one, but two distinct places.
You have people from all over. It's a very urban area, and things are going on. You go outside and it's rural Georgia, it still has a slower pace to it. So you basically have two Georgias.
Then go to South Georgia and Southern accents. The old South is more visible outside of the city than within.
The city is Atlanta, known as the capital of the New South. In recent years, Atlanta has acquired a global profile thanks to a strong economy, the 1996 Olympics, a baseball dynasty, and an internationally renowned hip-hop scene. But for all its cosmopolitan flair, it may still be best known as the home of history's most enduring, recognized, and valuable brand.
Personally, as a Georgian and as a native of Atlanta, I was always proud of Coca-Cola, and then when I could work for them, that was the best day in my life.
Coca-Cola was invented by a pharmacist named John Pemberton on May the 8th, 1886, in his backyard in a copper pot using a boat oar. He then took this beverage to a drugstore in downtown Atlanta, where it was served to the first patron and was found to be delicious and refreshing.
We started with 1 ounce of Coca-Cola syrup, added 5 ounces of carbonated water, jerking the handle back and forth to create a stream that mixed the Coca-Cola for me. And that's where I got my name as a soda jerk, from jerking the handle back and forth.
Being the birthplace of the world's #1 soft drink company would be a notable distinction for any state. But in Georgia, it's just one of many. In 1912, the Girl Scouts were founded in Savannah by Juliette Gordon Low. Wesleyan College in Macon, which opened in 1839, is the world's oldest college for women. And Georgia was the first state to grant full property rights to married women. Georgia's oldest city, Savannah, is considered by many to be one of the most beautiful towns in America. It was also the nation's first planned city. Founded in 1733 by philanthropist James Oglethorpe, Savannah was laid out on a grid of central squares, providing large open spaces for public gatherings and military maneuvers, which were then critical to the city's defense.
And Spanish Florida, who was the enemy of Great Britain.
Another first for Georgia came in 1785, when Athens became the home to the first state-chartered university in the young nation.
Have an informed, educated citizenry, so the momentum to build what would become the University of Georgia originated as a result of the American Revolution.
Officially, Georgia is known as the Peach State, even though it trails both California and South Carolina in the production of that famous fruit. But Georgia, and Georgia alone, holds the bragging rights for another culinary favorite. It's the sweet Vidalia onion. And it only grows in one place, the farmlands of southern Georgia.
You can't find it anywhere else in the world. The type of soil they have that gives it the unique characteristics of the onion, the sweet onion.
Georgia can also claim the largest mass of exposed granite on Earth. Stone Mountain can be found just 16 miles east of Atlanta. It's home to the biggest bas-relief sculpture in the world, a solemn tribute to 3 heroes of the vanquished Confederacy: Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson.
It was begun by the same person that ended up doing the Mount Rushmore carving. But yet our carving here is larger.
Georgia joined the Confederacy in January 1861. 3 months before the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, South Carolina. But 3 years would pass before Georgia witnessed the full fury of total war. The offensive began when the Union Army, under command of General William Tecumseh Sherman, laid siege to Atlanta.
It made a lot of sense to burn Atlanta, to disrupt the railroads, to disrupt industry in support of the Confederate war effort.
But Sherman wanted more than just Atlanta. He was determined to decimate the Confederacy, both in spirit and in fact. He proposed a scorched earth march across Georgia, from Atlanta to coastal Savannah, with his army consuming or destroying everything in its path. Initially, however, Sherman's plan met with resistance from President Lincoln, who was up for re-election.
if the campaign backfired, it would have considerable political consequences. Lincoln himself that summer predicted that he would not get reelected as his party's standard bearer.
The president asked Sherman to stall his march until after the general election in November 1864. It worked. Lincoln won, and Sherman's march to the sea was on. The Union columns advanced with devastating fury. Railroads were uprooted, buildings and bridges were burned, storehouses were raided, slaves were freed and joined the rear guard of the march.
Sherman himself noted at the end of the march that over the course of the month or so that they were in the field, his soldiers succeeded in coming up with $100 million worth of materiel that had been in the Georgia countryside, taking 20 million of it to their own advantage and destroying 80 million worth of goods.
Some 70 years later, the fall of Atlanta and the destruction of Georgia was brought back to life in one of the 20th century's most popular novels, Gone with the Wind. It was the first and only book ever written by Margaret Mitchell.
Margaret Mitchell is a native Atlantan. She won the Pulitzer Prize for Gone with the Wind in 1937. But when she wrote the book, she wrote it in secret. She informed what has become a phenomenon throughout Georgia, throughout the United States, and the world.
When Mitchell's novel was published in 1936, the South was still tainted with the prejudice and segregation that had outlived the Civil War. A tide of racial change, however, was beginning to build, even though its greatest future leader was still a young boy living in this Atlanta home. Martin Luther King Jr. was the son and grandson of Baptist ministers who helped shape his views on race. But King's true mentor was a man he met at Atlanta's Morehouse College, Benjamin Mays.
He wanted to be a lawyer, but then Dr. Mays was also an ordained minister, and he was president of Morehouse, great educator, great speaker. Quite literally, Dr. King would not have become a minister without meeting Benny Mays.
Dr. Mays was not an activist in the strictest sense of the term. The strength of his message was his oratory and his writings, in which he came down very, very forcibly against segregation and discrimination. These were not the things that the country as a whole, let alone the South, were ready to hear.
In 1955, Dr. King was a key organizer of the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, a groundbreaking civil action that lasted just over a year. King once again turned to Benjamin Mays.
When the Montgomery bus boycott was beginning, proceeding, Dr. Mays was called upon by Dr. King for advice as to strategy and direction.
It was Dr. Mays who urged King to continue working for a nonviolent solution. The strategy worked. On December 21, 1956, the United States Supreme Court declared the laws requiring segregation on buses unconstitutional. After Martin Luther King's assassination in 1968, his old mentor Benjamin Mays delivered the final eulogy from the chapel on the campus of Morehouse College.
He drew no distinction between the high and the low, none between the rich and the poor. He belonged to the world and to mankind. Now he belongs to posterity.
The courage of men like Benjamin Mays and Martin Luther King Jr. continues to inspire Georgia today. Their lasting ideals are echoed in Atlanta's unofficial slogan, the city that's too busy to hate.
Look here, I'm talking about America, sweet America.